Okay, I'm gonna try and save the elephant in the room for the end of this. I want to talk about everything else first, if I can. Okay, so everyone gets back from a tribal after Charisma's gone. And then we get what appears to be the final visit to the Island of Idols for the season. And I don't know why, but I was predicting it would be Dean before he even went to the island, but Dalton Ross pointed out something that I hadn't noticed. It's always been a different person going to the island every time. Now, granted, there were a rock draw or two that occurred earlier in this season, so it was possible, but unlikely that there could have been repeats. So he actually seems to theorize that it was just people's names that hadn't been picked in there. And who knows, when Dan reached into the bag, maybe there weren't as many, but I don't think we're going to be able to figure that out given the elephant in the room. So he went there and risking his vote on the coin flip, makes sense. Him choosing the idol nullifier, out of the three things, I'd say that is the one that he has the most, shall we say, workability with, because the extra vote, it might not mean that much if you're in a bad position, but the idol nullifier, that can mean something if you're in a bad position. Sure, he doesn't go for the idol that he can't play for himself, but as it turns out, upon viewing his behavior in this episode, I don't think he was as loyal to Elaine as we were making it seem. It seemed like that he was a lot more on Tommy and Dan's group, even though Lauren was sitting a few feet away for one of those discussions. But yeah, when did she show up? That dynamic that Tommy's got going is kind of interestingly sparsed out. Like, I don't know what's totally going on in this guy's mind. Same thing with Dean. I mean, Tommy is in a decent enough position that you can call it a driver's seat, but I don't know, just something is not setting this guy up to be, I think, the right person to win this season. Just something in the back of my mind is telling me I shouldn't put my bets on him. I mean, I know Dalton Ross has his bets on him, but I don't know. There's just too many variables, and like no one explicitly is saying that they want to turn on him except Lauren, but Tommy's doing it to her, ironically, and just I don't totally get everyone's logic. Like, they're all thinking about, do I really want to do this? I might be leading into a trap, and then they go for a more obvious vote, which is not, oh my god, a bad idea, because if Elaine had made it, yeah, she would have slipped the vote. Whereas, say, if it's Lauren versus Tommy, yeah, he's a threat, but there's a chance. Right. So, it kind of makes sense, but whew, it kind of goes to show. This is why I'm not a big fan of having so many people heading into the final episode, although that's been kind of rectified. And also, the more I think about it, Dean choosing the idol nullifier, it's just more evidence that he never really was with Elaine. I guess he just wanted people to think that for a while, but I don't know, man. Just like, what is your motivation? I'm really struggling to figure this guy out. Not to say that it's not kind of interesting, but I wish we had more insight. Now, Immunity challenge, I was really surprised that Dean pulled that out, but okay, he did that. And then Elaine and Lauren trying to use Nora as the backup. I mean, like, it might help Lauren out long term to get to the end, But the end game for her, I'm not so sure. Like, do you really think that if you had gone for, well, Dean, if he hadn't won immunity, or Tommy, maybe that would have helped you out? Just. Okay, she makes a choice that tons of people have in that situation. Harder game at the end, more likely to get me there. Okay, I understand that 100%, but all these bits about potentially doing something and then it doesn't happen, it's getting me kind of confused. Then Janet finding the idol, well, I was kind of hoping it wouldn't be Dean or Elaine, but given what tricks Dean's got up his sleeve, in a way, that didn't matter that much, except it made the idol nullifier almost worthless, unless he's going to use it to get rid of Tom. Which he might. But would Janet use it on Tommy, the idol? Because that's the only one that's left, unless they put in one more visit to the island, which they wouldn't have if I'm... Yeah, because that was the beginning of day 36, and there were 6 people left. So unless something happens later in that day, Island of the Idols is done, and to my knowledge, no one has actually spilled the beans as to who is there. So I really wonder if Jeff's going to do anything on day 39 about those two. And if they've got a vote after all or not. But since the elephant in the room, maybe. Alright, now that I've discussed just about everything, and that's not to say, well, I'll give Elaine a farewell real fast here. Liked her and was really surprised at how far she got, but it made sense what happened to her. But even though she says that she's a mostly glass empty girl, she accepted her fate, and I'm impressed with her. Good job too, really. Okay, for real now, the elephant in the room. Well, given how it didn't involve a player, it makes sense that there wasn't any prelude, and while Dan, according to Jeff, was pissed about being removed from the game, by the time he actually got on the boat, he had calmed down and accepted the situation. And odds are, given how Jeff was reluctant to give out any information, I would not be too surprised if Dan has been barred from giving out any information about this incident. I wouldn't know. I haven't looked around the internet because I don't want any spoilers for the finale, but it just wouldn't surprise me, because if it didn't involve a player, this means that there's no way that production could have contained this, filmed this, or anything like that. And generally, it seems like people are told not to mention things that occurred like off camera until their season is a little bit in the past. Now, granted, Steven on Rob Sesternino's Know-It-Alls has definitely divulged a lot of behind-the-scenes about Cambodia, but I'm pretty sure they got rid of that free-year restriction where you couldn't talk about your season of behind-the-scenes bits owing to the invention of social media, so I'd reckon that they just lower it to wait till the season's over and then you can start describing a lot more. But this is definitely something that he probably wouldn't be able to talk about. And given how Dan, ended up accepting his situation, that's also an indicator that there's no, oh my god, big way to spill the beans. So just he did something off camera that he didn't perceive to be as wrong, and then bam, he's gone for the game. So for the first time, we have a Survivor player that's been ejected from the game, and that That throws a curveball because I didn't think that he was going to win this because he didn't have anything to his name and seemed perfectly willing to follow what either Tommy or Lauren was telling him. And even though he had that issue with Janet, it seemed like they buried it enough that he might have been willing to work with her. So he wasn't going to do anything to save himself. Would he have made it? Probably, because Tommy, Dean, and Lauren are all technically more likely to go before him, and had he stayed, I'd say the odds were 100%. At least one of them would have gone. Dean, Tommy, Lauren, I mean. So, while not a huge loss, this does disrupt the flow of the game in an unfortunate way because, coincidentally, I'm going to tell you this right now, almost all the times that I've heard of this situation happening on Big Brother, spoiler alert if you don't want to watch this, but it's really not a big deal, this spoiler. If I recall correctly, every time there's been an ejection on Big Brother, it's happened relatively early in the season. So while it does disrupt the game, ultimately it doesn't disrupt it that much. This isn't the case here. We had an ejection at pretty much the last chance they could have done it. Okay, that's not 100% true. There were 4 days technically left in the game, but like, I would have known if this incident would have happened during the very last week, and I didn't think this happened during the last week, so, And I had begun to guess it was Dan just as the season went along, because I knew it was a guy, and then as I'm watching this, I'm like, it's gotta be Dan or Jamal, and Jamal exited the game with positive enough air, but I'm like, all the way to the penultimate episode before something happens? Like, seriously? After all that? Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have ejected him, because if it involved something that didn't even happen to a player, that's a totally different ball game. Even if he hadn't had that warning in the past, you mess with production, you are really in trouble. Sheesh. So that happened, and definitely put a damper on this season because, regretfully, I had gotten over what had happened earlier in the season. So that now that this happens again so close to the end, that really sets a downer for this season, because I didn't have much faith with this season, but then it got better. We had the controversy, but then we moved past it just because it wasn't mentioned in the edit. And then we have this thing happen again. Man. So, we'll have to see how this finale shakes down, and if we can move past it there. They're probably not going to mention Dan after, like, the first minute, and then maybe a 20-second acknowledgement at the end. Although I'm sure Jeff is going to do everything he can to avoid talking about him at that reunion show, because if Dan's not on the jury, he's not going to be at the reunion, no way. Yeah. Okay, so, talking about the remaining 5 players, Nora, she can't win this game. It's literally that simple. Her odds have definitely improved about her making it to the end. I'm still inclined to root against her, though. Janet, theoretically, she could win if Tommy and Dean go and the jury don't feel like Lauren did that much, but I think the odds of that are just pretty down low if you ask me. So I'm gonna rule her out as well. Dean, he's got a good game going and he has a very interesting level of trust with everyone, but Dan going takes out a good amount of the security that he had. It's possible that his legacy advantage bluff, though, is going to help him. It's possible, but I think he's been saying that Final Six is his coup de grace here, and that's no longer an option. He could easily win immunity or save himself with the fire making. Well, see, he's got one good of a chance if he makes it, but it depends on what the jury says and who has the momentum going in, because theoretically Dean could make it, but he might not have the greatest momentum behind him. Odds are he would, but it's possible. We'll have to see. Tommy, as I hinted earlier in making this video, he appears to be in the driver's seat, but I just don't know. In the back of my mind, especially now that Dan's gone, even though he does seem to have a deal with everybody left at this point, except possibly Nora, I don't know. Just something tells me this guy's not going to win this. And then that leaves Lauren. Well, she has to get rid of Tommy, that is 100% sure, and then, most likely she has to get rid of Dean or try and get Dean over to her side, and as of right now, I'm not so sure that she's going to be able to do that, and she's got remarkably low footing here, because she did have some momentum with the other girls, but they're all gone now, and Janet... Okay, she could turn against Tommy, but I really don't know. Lauren's best hope is to get Janet to help her, and then get rid of Tommy, and then hope that Joey doesn't give it to Dean. So who wins? I think people are thinking Tommy or Lauren. I'm saying Dean or Lauren. Alright, that takes care of this. Let's see how this season turns out. And hopefully this elephant doesn't put too much of a damper on it, even though it had put a damper on it earlier. Who knows, maybe this is me doing the white privilege bits where I'm less sensitive to the issue. It's possible.